wasn't much to decide or think about. So moving on, I'd like to reconvene the open session of our meeting.
There we go.
And
Thank you.
I have 6:13. So could we have a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening? Okay, thank you. Moving on, I believe if you could read the mission statement, Mr. Pearson.
The mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you so much. Moving on, just to notify the public, the school committee met in executive session for about 10 minutes. We discussed homeschooling requests, and we also approved our minutes from our executive session on 1/27. The vote was unanimous and it carried 3-0. For the public's benefit, Mr. Fleury had some difficulty with his computer, so he wasn't able to join us. So that's why it's a 3-0 vote. Moving on to number 4, is there a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
I make a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And could we just raise our hands if we agree with that? We'll just, instead of doing a call on the vote. Okay, looks like we have 4-0 on that approval. And we'll move on to the approval of minutes that were in your packet for 1/27/2022. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of 1/27/2022 as presented/amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor, just raise your hand. Looks like I have 4 zeros. I mean, 4-0, 4 yeses. I'm not thinking straight tonight either.
Relax,
4
relax,
zeros.
relax.
I think we're all in a brain fog with COVID.
I'm having some fun. That's all. I'm sorry.
Moving on to the public agenda, just to inform the public and the attendees gathered, if any of the following agenda items are open for discussion from the public, after the school committee discusses, and before we would actually, if there's a vote involved, before I would call for the vote, a motion will be made, and I will ask the attendees if there's anyone interested in commenting or questioning or et cetera. So that being said, we can move on to agenda item number 6, which is the FY23 budget workshop and capital improvement plan discussion. We received some additional information in our packets. So Mr. Cowett, would you like to
Sure.
start?
We have about 4 or 5 things we want to discuss with you, and we shared with you earlier this week, and then even some things were shared with you today. So the first
Great.
one is the capital improvement plan. It's a lengthy document. It's titled Capital Improvement Program Request Overview 21-22. The document shouldn't be unfamiliar to you because many of the items on this document are items that we've had on our capital improvement list for a few years. Across the top over to the right, you'll talk about projected costs in future years, you know, and when you start thinking about what something costs this year versus what's going to cost in 5 years if we don't address the issues. And the item stands as is, except for 2 exceptions, is we're moving the Western Well to the top of the list. Because that's something that we need to address really sooner than later. Russ Hill, our new facilities person, has been assessing our needs. You know, Jason left him a really great document, but with the time Russ has been here, he's identified that well needs to go to the top of the list. And then a new item that we want to move also to the top of the list is cutting into the sewer line on Reservoir Road so that the high school would be connected to the sewer. In a similar fashion to how we connected Tyoke to the sewer. We're still exploring that in terms of the cost and you know, the feasibility of making that happen. But We go through the budget and we look at all the different expenses, and we have some expenses associated with using a septic system, and not just with pumping, but also with maintenance. And if we can get the school, especially a school that size, onto a sewer line, I think that's, to our advantage in terms of, maintaining a nice clean atmosphere for the students. And if you flip through the packet, the middle of the packet has a lot of pictures of different projects that we've been proposing for the years. And it also has the costs associated with that project. Honestly, some of these projects are things that we were hoping would be addressed if we were able to move forward with a bond in a new school at the middle school and improvements at all the other schools. Many of these items would be addressed, but because that wasn't put forward, we have to address these through our capital needs. And so we have a maintenance requirement that we have to meet, and these are the items that would be on that list. Any questions about that?
Thank you, Mr. Cowett. I guess we'll start with Mr. Pearson. Did you want to? No, actually, I think it's Mr. Florio this month. This is the first meeting of the month. So do you have any questions, Mr. Florio?
Oh, Madam Chair, I've looked at all of this many times. And what I really am appalled at is it's the first time I was able to get a look at the generator for the high school. I mean, it really is in deplorable condition. And
We've had a need for that for a while. I've seen that on several years' lists. So,
but I've never seen it. I've never seen a picture of it. And this is the first. And we need, and I hear that the chair of the planning board that usually approves this is out sick. I heard that last night at a fire board meeting. So I don't know when this will get on the docket of the planning commission, because the chairman and department chair of the planning commission, Russ Crossman, is not available. So I don't know. I don't know what impact that will have
Dave,
on us.
the chairman is Ron Flynn.
Okay, Donna.
Russ is the department chair, but he also has a deputy. And that person's doing things in his
Russ's place.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is it, Donna? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. As long as this gets on the agenda of the planning commission, I have no problem, because you know the routine. First it goes to the planning commission. They normally approve all our recommendations, and then it gets to the council, and then they reject all our recommendations. So I don't know how that's going to work out this year.
I suspect the council will be on top of it, because it is a requirement for us to send it across the street. So
Thank you.
I think we send it not only to the town council, but to the planning board or wherever the process is. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over to the manager and he distributes that list to the appropriate parties.
Good. Okay, Madam Chair. That was my only question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian, anything from you?
I think it was a smart move moving the well up to number 1, because that's very important. Clean drinking water, very important. So I'm glad that they moved that up. And I got to tell you, I'm looking at these pictures, and now I actually look at pictures like this for my job as an underwriter. I would have canceled this. I would have canceled this policy a long time ago. I have to tell you. I can't get over the amount of stuff that needs to get done. And it's like everything is critical. Everything is, but I do believe that the well should have been moved up to number 1. That was a good move on Mr. Hill's part.
Yeah,
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, same. Glad to see the well moving up. That's been a critical point that directly impacts students and the well-being of students and staff in that building. I see that this list is still in the 21-22 format. So this will be updated before we vote on it and present it to council or town manager.
Yeah, and in response to that, I think, yes, it will be updated. And then the other thing we'll have to discuss is what exactly stays on this list. Because if you total up that second column, that 22-23 column, it's a $3 million list. And, we'll have to prioritize, and we can just go down the line and say, we're going to do the top 10 or top, 8, whatever the number is. But we need to budget for the projects that we're going to do. And so we need to do two things. We need to put in the proper format for voting, but we also have to determine what stays on this list in terms of what fits into our overall budget for capital improvements.
Yeah, everything stays on the list. So the tricky part of that is, it's something we've had a discussion about in the past, is definitely prioritization is important, definitely putting them in the right columns as far as when we anticipate we can work on these projects. But we shouldn't be removing any capital items from the list for, this came up last year when they were starting to talk about impact fees and lowering impact fees, because, our capital projects lists are so small, we're charging too much. We can't do that. We have to put forward an accurate representation of what all the projects are somewhere. So we just have to be careful of how we do that. That's all.
Yep.
But no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the strategy, I think you phrased it better than I did. Our priority and how we're going to tackle this list over the course of the next number of years. I think that's the better way to represent the work.
Perfect. Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I only had a couple of questions. The first one is, I know these are estimated pricing, but I know that we had maybe last meeting, the meeting before, I think when Mr. Hill was here, he mentioned that the well was he advised that there was going to be some kind of stainless steel, something. It presently doesn't have the correct sort of in the ground protection or something. I can't even remember what it's called, but
What is it, like a sleeve?
Yeah, the sleeve. Do you remember that conversation? I was just wondering if
Kathy, I asked Russ to attend. I can have Jim pull him in and specifically describe what you're talking about.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to know if some of the prices have been updated. If anything looked like it might cost more. I'm sure you've got it all under control, but I was curious about that. And then the second one is I can't remember. I think it's at Ellen Sean Feinstein, or it might be other schools as well. The cooling and they showed us some I think now they might have some window air conditionings, and what was in the picture looked like it might be like a ventless system. So I was wondering if that's the kind of the plan for putting some air, cooling quality or something. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I don't know if I ever noticed that previously. So I did see that and said, oh, I wonder what kind of air conditioning that is, or is it some other kind of cooling that works with the heating system? I don't know. I'm not an HVAC person. So
I'll have to get more information about that, but I will tell you, throughout the district, we have about 3 different types of cooling systems in place. We have the split systems that cool in heat. Then we have the indoor floor units that are vented outside, but it's a floor unit. Then we have the traditional box AC that goes into a window. So it kind of depends on the space and, how much electricity is required to run it, and, proper venting for the different products, the different devices.
All right. I didn't even know why I had those questions. They just kind of popped into my head when I was reading through it. And I'm sure you guys have it under control, but thank you for that explanation. I don't really think I have. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that I think the only air conditioning I really know about is a couple of, the high school part of the high school's air conditioning, so for summer, so that we can have students there. And, there are parts of maybe Allen Feinstein, that like the library area, the media center might have had a cooling unit. So I just was kind of curious how that worked, but
Yeah, and Washington Oak has some parts of the
Some too.
building that are centrally air conditioned.
Okay.
That being the newest building, that was something that was done when that building was built. It's not the entire building. There's good ventilation throughout, but in terms of central air, it exists in the office, the library, the gym, and the cafeteria.
Okay, yeah, kind of makes sense, especially in a newer building, because it's going to just get warmer. And if these buildings at all survive, like Washington Oak will, is when I say fairly new, that's it's an understatement. It's just comparing it to the other schools, I guess.
Right.
Maybe impossible to live in without, a really good air conditioning system of some sort. But that's enough on that.
So the next item I wanted you to put your eyes on is the salary, the preliminary budget, the school budget salary document. Is about 200 pages long. It was a lengthy document. I just wanted to kind of orient you to the format of that document. So what we have here, and this took a long time for us to get from our provider in terms of a report, and we're probably going to ask them to run the report again in a different way so that we have a different view, because this one is very lengthy. But the way it's organized is each chunk of objects are one employee. So for example, if you look at the top of it, it says 0.4 French. Do you see that?
Yep.
And the next 7 or 8 items all say 0.4 French. That's one employee. That's one employee. And then everything to the right of that is what's associated to that employee in terms of salary and benefits. And some of those things are health, some of those things are pensions, some of those things, there's a few different pension types. So that's a breakdown that kind of lets you see each employee in terms of their salary and benefit. And then there's a total that you can see that for each person. One of the things that we'd like to do is get another report from them that summarizes all the benefits onto one line. So we have a salary and a benefit line. It will bring it down a little bit, so that's not 200 pages long. But then the other thing we want to do is reorient it a little bit so there's different columns so that we can show you the breakdown going left to right versus top to down, top to bottom. Because I think sometimes going left to right, it's easier to kind of follow this is the employee, this is the salary, this is the benefit, this is the total. So this was something that we had provided to you in previous years. So we're giving it to you again to look at. And then we can provide you another more summarized version of it. So for quick reference, you can get through that as well.
Thank
So we
you.
keep going, or do you want me to take questions on that?
I think that we could ask for questions. So, Mr. Florio, do you have any questions for Mr. Cowett?
Mr.
On this
Cowett,
document?
Mr. Cowett, just one question. I'm not going to micromanage or get into anything extraordinary, but where it says the second column, where it says 0.5 ELA / 0.5 social studies teacher, that person makes $127,636.25.
So that's when you
That's with
put
benefits.
everything together. That's the salary and the benefit package. So with each employee, and this is why it was important to break it out this way on this first pass by, is because we want you to see there's a cost associated with each employee, but a part of that cost is their salary. The rest of it has to do with pension and benefits. And so when you think about the cost associated to them, there's a salary cost, but there's a pension cost too. And you'll see as you go through this, some people have a lot of things connected to them. There's a lot of rows, and it has to do with which buildings they work in and where the money is being allocated to and from.
Yeah.
I think a summary would be a little bit easier for us to kind of go through, because then you could just see one employee at a time, salary, benefit.
Yes. Oh, that's okay. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to know. That's fine with me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian.
Not at this time. I want to reserve the right to maybe ask a question later, but no, I don't really have one at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pearson?
No, thank you for providing this info. No questions on this at this time.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I'm not sure I understand what all of the transaction types stand for. So if we do see this data somewhat like this, it would be nice to have a key of some sort.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I could use a key too when I look at my check to figure out where all my money's going. Because when I look at my check, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, and you know what struck me, and it's just because it's on the first page, is that the TIA CREF, and it's like, I guess it's the Rhode Island share? You know, it's the last thing on most of the folks. Is that part of the state pension?
So with the pension reform that went through in, I think it was 2011, 12,
That's the
many
hybrid.
people will shift it over to it's sort of like a two-part pension system. One is a traditional pension that gets paid into the Rhode Island pension system, and then the other part of it is a CREFT account in which
Okay.
the employee is allowed to determine how the money that goes into that account is being invested. And money, the funds are contributed by the employee and the employer. And so it goes into that account, and then, you know, like I have a CREFT account and I can basically say, I'd like to invest my money this way, but it's
Yeah.
part of our retirement system now.
I didn't realize that. I knew that we had switched to a hybrid plan for some folks, especially even new people coming on board, but I didn't know it was TIA CREF or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's what I have at Brown, so that's why it stuck out to me. Anyway, some of it's pretty easy. So I am kind of curious on the second person who's the 0.5 ELA, and again, it's because it's on the first page, I noticed it. There seems to be 2 life insurances for 268.47 and one for 268.48. Why would that be?
Harold, can you speak to that?
Yeah, because there's because it's half of it is ELA and half of it's socials. So
Oh, I
Okay.
get it.
so it's
I get it.
split.
All
So
right.
there's two salaries there, and therefore it's split. That's why you have 2 of everything in there.
Oh, I get it. I was wondering about that. Okay, makes sense. Thank you. All right, I'm done with that. So you can move on, Mr. Cowett.
So the next thing, and I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit, but the next thing is we gave you a preliminary budget sheet. It's titled Coventry Public Schools School Budget Preliminary Budget. And you'll see that we have put a few things in there that go in a column that's titled 210-2022, and it has some budget savings associated to it. It looks like this. So we're going through an exercise here at Central Office that's been actually very, very fruitful. It's something we've done before, but it's good to go through it with having Harold and Chris newly on board. We're going through the budget line by line by line, and we're looking at it through the lens of UCOA, because the UCOA budgeting accounting process has different codes, and the different codes are associated with different locations, different schools, different, whether it's special ed, whether it's regular ed, whether it's professional development, materials, supplies, all the coding system is set up in a way that we can look at it line by line by line. And what we're trying to do is identify places where we can either consolidate lines or look at budgetary savings by eliminating. And so what we do is we're looking at it from a historical perspective. So if we have lines that have money in them, funds in them, that for the last 2 years haven't been spent, we're asking the question, why hasn't this been spent? And then making sure we can justify whether it should stay there or not. And if we can't justify that it needs to stay there, then we are either looking to move it to someplace else or to eliminate it. So it's a long process. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of lines in our budget, and we're not even accessing all the lines available to us, but we're literally going line by line. We sat with Mr. Wilson, who's on the screen now, and we went through his entire special ed budget line by line. And then he explained some things to us that we didn't know. We associated some costs that we weren't sure what they were associated to, and then we made some adjustments. So preliminarily, we've already found about $223,000 worth of savings based on this project, but we're not done yet. And I don't want you to think it's, we check a box, we did that, we're moving on. This is something we'll continue to go through, and hopefully we'll find some more savings in that budget. And then the other thing we're doing is we're trying to budget a little bit more, strategically. So right now we're spreading our funds across lots of lines. And sometimes it makes a little bit more sense to put the funds into one line and then move it from one line to another as needed. So instead of going through the process of saying we need $200 in this line and $200 in this line and $200 in this line, and then waiting to see if the money gets spent out of there, we're saying let's collapse that into one general line. And then when the funds need to be allocated, we switch it to the line that it's associated to, either by school or by type or function. So I just wanted to bring that forward to you, that we've been doing this and we're not done, and we'll probably have another update for you, the next opportunity we have to come before you.
Nice.
Great, that makes sense.
And then the last thing, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, what's the last thing? And then we can maybe open it up for questions.
The last thing is, I think Mr. Pearson had asked about career and tech and about the number of students that we have in district, out of district, and a comparison from prior year to this year. So we supplied you with a table. We can do anything we want with that in terms of if any of you want more information, we can provide more information. For example, if you want to know what the cost associated with each one of those students is to the district, we can provide that to you. But it's a document that looks like this. And the top section of it is titled 2020, 2021 CTE programming. It lists each program. It lists the number of students that are from Coventry, the number of students that are coming from outside of Coventry with a total. And then below it is the 21-22 part. And it does the exact same thing. It lists the program, the number of kids from Coventry, the number of kids from outside of Coventry, and then the total.
Good. All right. Anything more, or should I open it up?
And then the only last thing is, and then now I'll stop, is we did give you a preliminary COVID budget just for you to start putting your eyes on. It's not done. It's not done yet, but this is where we're heading in terms of spending some of that ESSER money for COVID, the ARP money. So I know I threw 3 things at you. I'm just trying to be expeditious.
That's fine. No. Thank you, Mr. Cowett. Mr. Floria, any questions about that? That was just.
No questions, Madam Chair. All I want to know is, Don, when do you sleep?
I don't know. They might find me slumped in this chair when they come in tomorrow.
Thanks, Don.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody. Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Sand,
Floria. Yeah.
Mr. Wilson, thank you very much.
Mrs. Colonian, anything?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson?
No questions at this time. I'm sure I'll have some more soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I don't have any questions at this stage, but I really am grateful for all the information we got. So I'll spend more time with it as the weeks start to roll on here. So thank you very much. And again, thank you for all the people who are working on this budget to make it something that's we can present and stand behind. So thank you.
And if you don't mind me plugging Mr. DeVerna for a second, when we did these meetings, it was very nice to have somebody who could actually go right into the budget and be able to tell us right on the spot where the funds had gone in prior years. So sometimes when we were looking at the budget, we would all be looking at a particular line. We would see dollars that were allocated in 2021. And then Mr. DeVerna was able to go straight through our accounting software to say, in 2021, here is how that money was spent. And that would help us really quickly decide whether we need to maintain funding in that line or shift it someplace else. So it's nice to have a team of people that are comfortable with the software so that we can make decisions quickly versus us having to kind of fumble through it and look things up one by one.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you. Anything from the public before we move on?
Doesn't look like there's anybody that wants to speak.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Then I guess we can move on to item number 7, which is the Westerly Community Credit Union Teacher Grant Overview and Presentation, which was our reference number 2. And Mr. Coward, did you want to introduce our guest? Ms.
Sure.
Gates?
Just briefly. So, and I'm meeting Miss Gates for the first time myself. So, the Westerly Community Credit Union had done at the beginning of the year some grants for teachers in Coventry, and between Mr. Sands and Mr. Levis reaching out to their organization, we were looking to get more information about what was going on and what the opportunities were, and I think having Ms. Gates come to the meeting and sort of explain what they do, and I think they're new to the community. I think they're opening a branch in this area. So I don't want to steal their thunder because I'll probably say something incorrectly, but I'll let her have the floor. And welcome aboard. Welcome to the Coventry Public School Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me attend your meeting. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the time. Yes, we are the Westerly Community Credit Union. Although Westerly is our name, we have branches now. We have one in Coventry on Nooseneck Hill Road. I had to stop and think about that. Still getting used to it. We opened last month. We're so excited to be part of the community, and we really appreciate the warm welcome that I know myself. I particularly appreciated Superintendent Levis' open-mindedness to me reaching out and sharing this teacher grant program that we started in 2016. Since then, we've been working with about 7 different school districts, and this year we were able to extend the opportunity to the Coventry School District, and they went after it. It was with such enthusiasm that we received applications. The process works that we send out information the end of the school year for the following year, and the deadline for applications and submissions is October 31st. We made the process real simple with a 1-page application, so it wouldn't be so bothersome. We know how busy school professionals are. This program is for teachers, administrators, as well as staff. So it's open to everyone. And so we try to make it really user-friendly. 1-page application, a nice description of what the project is about, and a budget listing of how you would be using your funds. Those arrive to me. I'm the lucky one that gets to coordinate the program and tie everything together so the committee can review the applicants. We prepare them so they're all anonymous, which I'm really proud of. So our board members that are part of the team review all the applicants. They use our grid, and based on the information for our rating scale, they make their selections. So this year we awarded over $9,000, and there were 19 applicants that received awards, and 5 of them, over $2,000, came from Coventry. So that's really exciting. And the projects were great. I don't want to make this too long, so I'm just going to skim right through for another minute or two. And then if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to speak about this, as I'm sure you can tell. But some of the projects that were awarded was Mrs. Maxwell's Bank and Store, which was very close, dear to my heart, because she's helping children learn about needs and wants using math skills. A virtual store, they're understanding how to make decisions and purchases. So it's really close to what I do. I also handle the financial education for our credit union. So that was a great example of her putting together a program that's going to meet some great life skills for the students. We also had a STEM station that was awarded, and that's going to be at one of your Western Coventry Elementary School, and that's going to help the STEM team, and family night with all kinds of Lego equipment and connectors, and they're going to be very creative. There was also the Italian Language and Culture Award that's going to your Italian level 4P senior class students that are going to be taking a gondola ride in the Providence River, which is something that I think is an annual event they look forward to. We're so pleased to be funding that. And then we had funds for filling station, which was a retrofit water bottle filling station for the gymnasium, which is already activated. And I understand from the teacher, Mr. Kramer, that it's really been a big help, where kids are hydrated. They're not having to leave the gym to get anything to drink. It's great for visitors. We know how strong your athletic programs are and all your activities. So we're happy to help with that. And the last one was a Chromebook charging station to really help a teacher's class get organized. So they had less time going around crawling under tables to look for cords, and they could spend more time on their lessons. And the children are more independent now. They can handle it themselves. So those are some great projects that came from your district. We're proud to make the awards. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Gates. Yes, it's very exciting. And we're so grateful that the credit union does this kind of work. It's just amazing, and we're very appreciative. Are there any questions? We'll start with Mr. Florio or comments.
No questions, Madam Chair, except for thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Gates. We appreciate it very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Mrs. Colonian.
I don't have any questions, but I also want to say thank you. And they all sound like great projects. They really do.
It's very
So
exciting.
Thank you
Yes.
again for thinking of us.
Thanks. Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Pearson.
I'll just echo the comments. It's wonderful to hear that we have these community partnerships and these grants that become available for these projects. It really makes a difference in the community as a whole, but but especially for our schools and our students. So thank you for doing this grant program, and I'm very happy that we were able to have some successful applications and projects.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Yeah, and I just want to finally just say that I want your job. It sounds like such a fun, great job. I would never imagine that a credit union would have a financial education officer. So, absolutely kudos to this organization and their want to be part of the community and be a stakeholder and help the schools that are in your community as well. So again, thank you so much. I will put it out to the public. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment or thank our stakeholder partner?
No hands are up.
Well, it looks like we can move on, and we really want to thank you for joining us this evening and describing some of these projects. I think I might have heard about some of them previously from the superintendent or from different sources in town or whatever. So just wonderful, wonderful work. So
Our pleasure. And I just want to say that I'm sure you're going to be hearing about many more from your district. You have just a lot of creativity. The applicants were fabulous, and the enthusiasm and the partnership is really cherished. So we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck with your budget.
Oh, thank you. We'll see you later.
Nice meeting you all. Thank you.
Nice
Thank you,
meeting you
Ms.
too.
Gates.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So I guess we can move on to agenda item number 8, which is the American Recovery Plan funds for high school, high quality curriculum materials and discussion and approval, which was our reference number 3, I believe. And Mr. Cowett, would you like to start this?
I do. Jim, can you pull that up? Do you have access to that?
In one moment, please.
While Jim's getting that put together. So the ESSER grant is, it's the ARP money that's available to us. And there's certain parameters on how those funds can be spent. And one of the acceptable uses of the funds is curriculum materials. And well, we've actually come before you already to have you approve some curriculum material purchases. And if you recall, one of the times we came before you, I said, we were going to have a larger ask, later in the year. And so Mr. Sands, Mrs. Anzalone, and I sat down together and we went through our curriculum needs. And just to kind of remind everybody on the call, on the meeting, is the state of Rhode Island passed legislation that's requiring us to have high quality curriculum materials. And I'm not complaining about that, because we need the best materials for our kids, and we need updated materials. So the fact that we have an opportunity to put so many new things in front of teachers and kids is an excellent opportunity to impact our performance. So we have received a grant for $500,000, and that helped get us started in the middle school for ELA. We also have some money reserved for the high school ELA. But if you recall from when Mrs. Angeloni came before you earlier, we're doing elementary, which is K-5, reading and math. We've already done the reading at the middle school. We're doing the math at the middle school. And then at the high school, we're doing reading and math. So we're doing a lot, and we're a fairly large district. And so we've been thinking about all along, how we're going to fund some of this project, how we're going to fund the materials. And we were trying to be creative. Well, when we looked at the grant and seeing that there was an acceptable use, we started strategizing how we could use those funds to get the curriculum materials, and not necessarily just for 1 year, but actually make a large purchase so that we would be pretty much set up for the next 5 to 6 years. And that would be cost avoidance in terms of materials and supplies for a number of years. It would also give us an opportunity to make sure that our budget is built in a way so that when that cliff comes, right, when that 5th or 6th year is here, that we can then move forward with putting the cost of any of the consumable materials into the local budget. A lot of what we're buying to get started is not consumable. When you start a new program, what you're buying is teacher manuals, textbooks, novels, manipulatives, technology. You're buying things that you need to spend just once. And then the rest of what you buy has to do with what we call consumables, which means they get used on an annual basis, and you have to make those purchases over and over again. We try to avoid buying too many consumables if we can, because it's a cost that is so reoccurring that if we can find a way to avoid that, we do. So Jim, can you click through this a little bit for me? So at Coventry High School, we are looking at $527,500, and that would get new math curriculum materials and professional development to 5-year contract for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Now, let me just pause there for a second. There's new secondary regulations, and the new secondary regulations are recommending that every high school student take these 3 math programs. And so we want to make sure to stay ahead of those recommendations and regulations that we have the appropriate materials in place. There's an adaptive online math program that can be used throughout the year, but also can be used during the summer. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and that's going to come up a few times through this as well, is we have other programs that we've purchased over the years that we will be able to eliminate with the purchase of these new materials. So there are things that we have allocated as expenses that we're probably going to be able to drop off our books in the next year or two, because we're going to be replacing them with these new updated products. A new ELA curriculum, materials and supplies, a 6-year contract, grades 9 to 12. Financial literacy materials, which is associated with a new legislation, and advanced placement course materials. Mr. Levis talked about this at a prior meeting, just making sure the teachers of our AP courses have the materials that they need and the PD that they need to be able to stay current with the requirements for AP. Jim? Middle school, $83,600. This expense is not as high because I told you we already bought the ELA materials with grant money. And then the math program that we've been doing a slow implementation over the last 3 years. So we've been absorbing that cost for the last 3 years. But this is an opportunity to sort of get that last piece in place so that they can be, good to go. So it'd be the Algebra 1 course and PD for the middle school, because we offer Algebra 1 at the middle school as well. And for kids who are accelerated in math, they can take Algebra 1 in middle school, and then when they go to the high school, they enter at geometry. Then they can take Algebra 2, and then they have an opportunity of potentially 2 years of advanced math, whether they want to take calc or statistics or trigonometry or one of them. And we have some kids who actually will try to take as many as they possibly can because they're interested in, advanced sciences and engineering and mathematics. So giving them an opportunity to get into Algebra 1 early is advantage. It's an advantage to the whole community. Adaptive online program, just like the high school, the ALEX program, and then enhanced ELA materials. So when we purchased that original ELA program for the middle school, they have what they call required text and recommended text. At the time, we were trying to be frugal. We only had limited funds through a grant. We only bought the required text. But there was a whole set of recommended texts that we weren't able to purchase. And we'd like to get those because that's where the flexibility comes in the program and gives the teacher an opportunity to differentiate in the class by having, more than the limited required books that come with the program. And next one, Jim. Elementary, 445,700. New ELA program, K2, teacher and student materials consumable. The consumable is a yearly cost. New math materials and manipulatives for K5, consumable and tech license. Tier 3 math intervention program. And then we're looking at a report card redesign. When you adopt a lot of high quality curriculum materials and you adopt the methodology and the scope and sequence that goes with those products, you have a requirement to really start thinking about your report card and making sure that you align your report card to what the kids are learning. So in our prior report card, we might have said that the kids learn geometry skills in trimester 1. And with the new program, geometry skills may land in trimester 2. And we want to just make sure that our report card is aligned to what we're doing in the classroom. And we do that through Aspen, and there's a cost associated with a new document. It's not a big cost, but there is a cost. I want to say it's about $1,200 per page. And then, we create the documents that we need to create and then make them available through Aspen. Jim? And then district-wide, so multi-tier systems of support. We talked about MTSS before. We've always used our own homegrown, self-created, teacher-created materials, but we have an opportunity to get something that is a little bit more robust, and then also something that would be able to go from K already all the way up to grade 12. What we have now, we are limited in what we can share horizontally and vertically. Like horizontally is not too bad, but vertically we're limited in how much information can be passed from one grade to the next or one school to the next, because the documents live in Google Forms, and it's hard to share Google Forms in a way that is confidential, but also in a way that allows people to get what they need. This system is a platform where that's all built in, and people can access a student's intervention plan, from 7th grade to 8th grade without having to go through a file and pull papers. And it also gives us some nice reporting for parents. And then, we want to build out our bullying and cyberbullying curriculum a little bit more. We have some pieces in place already in our health program, but we want to build that out with a dedicated curriculum program for our phys ed teachers to teach through health. Jim, is there any others? That's the last one? I think so.
Yes,
Any questions?
sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was the last one. Great, thank you. Mr. Florio, any questions about the spending of this ESSER funding for the materials that were outlined?
No, Madam Chair, none whatsoever. The only question in my mind is, Don, what about the kids who take trig and calculus and statistics and go down the engineering route?
Yeah, so we build those classes out as individual course classes. And so usually that is built as one course class. It's not part of a program purchase. Like when we buy high school math curriculum, we're buying a program that has these 3 courses embedded into the program. For trig, calculus, statistics, pre-calc, we build those as individual courses. And most of those have already been done by Mr. Branchow, who came before us as Teacher of the Year.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Coworth. And Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson.
Yep.
Special ed, is that included in this also? Special ed programs and, the necessary tools to
1%
teach?
all but 1% of our students access this curriculum. There's 1% of our students who access what we call the unique curriculum, and that we've been using for years, and that's used pretty much across the state and beyond. But then we will do other things to help accommodate students in the classroom to access this curriculum that Mr. Cowart's talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for everything you do. It's a tough population, I know. Okay, Yeah, I know. They're wonderful, aren't they? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian, anything?
No, I like seeing this. I'm a big math geek myself, so I like seeing that we're putting some money into math. But that's it. Thank you.
And to that point, before you go on to Mr. Pearson, we've already piloted some of these programs at the elementary level, and we just finished our STAR screening, our winter screening. And in some of the classes where we've already started piloting this, and this is really early on with not a lot of PD, we've already seen a difference in scores. So Mrs. Anzalone and I were celebrating a little bit today, looking at STAR scores and looking at the significant increases that we were not expecting. We're very happy for, but we weren't expecting to see what we saw. And we'll come forward with those scores and kind of go over where we're at, because part of the ARP money is addressing struggling learners, not just special education students, but anybody who's at risk. And how do we make sure that we target them? That's why the MTSS is important, because that is specifically interventions for struggling learners. And having programs that is robust and gives kids an opportunity to access the program where they're at will help us kind of get everybody moving along. And it's important to make sure that all our subgroups experience success, because if you recall, when we come before you with test results, sometimes our subgroups struggle because they haven't had access to some of the curriculum that they need to be successful. So Mr. Wilson and I and Mrs. Anzalone, we've been talking about a lot with how we want to approach the instructional strategies that go with these materials. If you have new materials, but you don't change how you do things, you're going to have limited success. We have to partner with our teachers and make sure we change materials, but we also change pedagogy, and that we address the teaching portion of it as well. So I didn't want to go on and on, but that's an important point.
Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Pearson.
No questions at this time. Looking forward to test scores presentation once we get rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. My only comment is that I find this extremely exciting, and I think I'm just grateful that we can spend ESSER funds on this kind of work. And it makes sense because, kids have had learning loss over COVID as well. So all of this just ties in beautifully with having our kids, realize their full potential and really get a good background, K all the way up to 12. So I'm really grateful for this work. Grateful that, we were able to spend this money on this particular item, because I think it's so well worth it and well spent dollars. And it might not have happened as fast without this funding. So I know that it was in the long range plan, but as you know, and we all know, resources are thin. And so trying to rustle up the money to actually, even doing like the ELA, you said, those, not the recommended readings as opposed to the required, all of that adds enrichment to all of our students. The fact that we can, well-resourced communities have that at their fingertips. So I think we do an amazing job when you think about it, in the fact that our resources can be thin at times. And so
we've been very frugal, and we've done things in a very tight budget, and we've been relatively successful with that approach. But if we want to be a top 10 district, if we want to get to a point where our kids are competing, at the state and national level with, other kids who have opportunities to have high quality curriculum, we need to do this. And I think you're absolutely 100% correct that if we didn't have an opportunity to use this funding, this would be a very slow multi-year rollout that we probably wouldn't hit the endpoint for another 5 or 6 years. Whereas we have an opportunity now to invest and invest well in something that will probably have the biggest impact on student learning. I mean, everything we ask for is important. There's nothing more important than this, because we're going to see direct impact almost immediately. And that's exciting for us, because we know our teachers work hard. We know our kids work hard, but to have an opportunity to give them something that's high quality and something that is going to have the impact that we like is just, super exciting. So for this particular item, it's a discussion and an approval. So we're looking for a vote so that we can move forward with, we're already putting the application together for the state, but we just want to make sure we had the support of the school committee.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the use of American Recovery Plan funds for high-quality curriculum materials as presented in the amount of $1,097,200.
I second the motion.
And before I call for the vote, are there any attendees listening that would like to comment on this or have any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand and Mr. Murphy will bring you into the meeting.
No hands are going up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. So all in favor, you could just raise your hand. Looks like it's unanimous, so motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for this presentation. It is very exciting news. And
That's a thank you to Mrs. Anzalone. She put this whole thing together and she pitched this proposal to Mr. Sands and I probably maybe a month ago. And we kept going back and forth and massaging it a little bit to make sure it was exactly what we wanted it to be. So she did all the legwork. So the thank you goes to her and her department.
well, thank you. I think I did see her as an attendee. So I think she's listening. So yes, she's first on my list. So thank you, Mrs. Anzalone. And Mr. Sands and Mr. Cowett for all your work and all the people that had decided on this proposal. So moving forward, number 9, agenda item number 9, career and technical education pathway appeal process and discussion, which was our reference number 4. Again, Mr. Cowett,
Yes.
you're on.
So this is something that's been discussed before. The General Assembly passed the law, and the law essentially for CTE said that if there are programs that are substantially similar, that for those programs, students wouldn't be permitted to leave their district to go to another district for a program that was substantially similar. I guess an easy example is if we have a computer tech program and a neighboring district has a program that's substantially similar, the student would not have the opportunity to leave our district. The student would have to stay here in Coventry. So the Department of Ed was supposed to come out with a list of all the substantially similar programs, and then we were going to be able to use that list to sort of determine who would be permitted to go someplace and who wasn't. And then we got a notification, I think it's in your packet reference 4, that basically said for next school year, 22-23, RIDE and the Board of Trustees, the CTE Board of Trustees did not find any substantially similar CTE programs across the state of Rhode Island. My own personal opinion, as Don Cowett, I find that I'm dumbfounded by that because I can't imagine there are no programs across the state that they can identify as being substantially similar. So what that feels like is, even though the General Assembly passed a law, that really nothing is changed in terms of that part of it. The only thing you can do is you can appeal that decision. The superintendent and I have had some conversation on this, but we haven't finished it up. But I did want you folks to know this is where we're at with this law. It's not exactly what we thought it would be. We're a little bit disappointed by that. There's a pretty lengthy description of what all that means in terms of the actual law and what the appeal looks like. But the problem also is the appeal deadline is Monday. So, I know Mr. Levis has been working on this, but I'm not sure if we really even have the time to pull something together and we're not even sure what we're appealing yet. You know what I mean? Like, this is still very fuzzy and gray to us. So we're a little frustrated, I'm not gonna lie, and disappointed. But just because if you're gonna do something like this, I guess we prefer it to be a little bit more rock solid. This seems not as rock solid as we prefer. So that's more of an update, and I'm happy to answer questions, but we just wanted to know where we were on that.
Thank you, Mr. Cowett. Mr. Florio, any comment?
No questions, other than it appears to be very arbitrary and disappointing. So that's it. That's it, Madam Chair. That's the only comment I have to make. I feel bad. I feel bad for our school system, and I feel bad, like similar to Mr. Levis and Mr. Cowart. It's wrong, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson?
I don't think I have any real questions. It's a little disappointing, but it is RIDE. So I guess that's the norm. They really only gave what? They published this on January 15th and gave you until February 15th to file appeals. That's a little short, but I guess, I don't know. Frustrating. I feel your frustration, but whatever you decide to do moving forward, definitely support you. I guess if we miss the window for filing appeals this year, maybe we can better prepare for next year and take the time to do it thoroughly. The other thing that's disappointing about this is the lack of what I would consider transparency. So they're measuring programs that are supposed to be, on whether they're substantially similar, but they're not really describing very well the criteria they're using to establish that. And I think that means these are subjective decisions. So again, even more disappointing when these governing bodies are making subjective decisions and then leaving it up to the LEAs to appeal their subjective decision with some more tangible information. In other words, they're making the school districts do all the work for them because they doesn't seem like they really did it. They may have, but it doesn't seem so. So I guess I'm just echoing your frustration. Hopefully we'll get some traction on this moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, and when the General Assembly pushed this forward, we're a district that, as you saw earlier in today's meeting, we have kids who come into our district, but we have kids that go to other districts at a substantial cost to our district. And so when this came through, we were looking at this as an opportunity to be able to, keep some kids in town, because this is, their school department, and we want to provide them a high quality program, but we don't also want people leaving for the wrong reason. And sometimes people leave for reasons other than academics. So I guess the frustration there is that we just thought we would be able to use this a little bit this year, and it doesn't look like there's not going to be much opportunity to do much with that. So that's that.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. My only comment is, when I read this and realized that RIDE found no programs that were similar, first of all, that was a shock. And then second of all, my first thought is it's just a workaround from the law, with the law. So, RIDE pushes choice. That's what they believe in, or at least the present leadership, and I can't speak for the rest of RIDE. But for them not to find in favor of, in giving us a list, I'm not sure if Mr. Pearson is correct that they certainly, the process of evaluating each individual course from different schools doesn't seem to have been done. Otherwise, I think they would have realized that there are substantially similar programs in some of our career and tech programs. So it absolutely made no sense to me when I saw that, and it was very, very disappointing. And I think the appeal process, like Mr. Pearson says, it's going to take, a district to do all the work to try to prove, and then it still might not go through if there's really resistance on the part of RIDE and or parents to try to convince people that, no, this is a much better program, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at some of our programs and what our students do, and a comparable program, perhaps in another district, it does appear that our students certainly excel statewide, nationwide. So I can't even imagine that our programs aren't substantially better, never mind similar to where our students might be going. So very disappointing as far as I'm concerned. So was not happy when I read this. And again, there was a very small window for us to try to appeal this year. So hopefully maybe, we can doing United Front next year to try to convince RIDE that programs to come up with a list. And I suspect there will be some districts that are in similar places like us that will also start a sort of groundswell against this sort of decision from RIDE. So thank you very much for giving us the update. Before we move on, are there any attendees listening that would like to comment on this?
No one has any hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Then I guess we can move on to agenda item number 10, the enterprise lease agreement for, oh, I guess that's being tabled. So number 10 is.
Yeah, we're
being tabled.
recommending that we table that one if it's okay.
Yes, and I suppose because we had scheduled a vote, is there a vote to table this particular agenda item, please?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to table the enterprise lease agreement for one facilities truck/plow discussion and approval.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And if you could just raise your hand in approval, if you're approved. Looks like a unanimous vote, 4-0, motion carries to table. Moving on to 11, which is the Coventry High School local pathway endorsements and approval, which is our reference number 5. Mr. Cowett, would you like to?
Yes, and this actually kind of goes hand in hand with what we just discussed. So I'm almost secretly glad that our enterprise agreement one got tabled, because this really should have been right next to the previous item, because they're very connected to each other. Jim, can you put up the reference 5 on the screen, please?
Just give me one moment. I need to reopen it.
Yep. So as Jim pulls that together, I just want to kind of set the table on this. So, to kind of give you a little bit, maybe refresh your memory. So the regional career centers throughout the state have programs that are funded through Perkins, programs that are aligned to, the job force, things like culinary and things like, automotive. And there are programs that are throughout the state that are pretty similar and with other centers. A few years back, many districts also had pathways that were approved. And those pathways, like, for example, Pontigansett is not a career and tech center like our regional career and tech center, but they do have pathways that are approved. And so when our students go there, they're going to these approved pathways. A third kind of pathway is a locally endorsed pathway, which means it's a pathway that we have put together at our school. It's not necessarily approved by RIDE, even though we could go through that process, and we probably will. But it is something that is we could put together for our students. The only downside is we can't tuition students in for these programs because they're not approved by RIDE. But I think there's a really good first step. And this is something that we started talking about with Mrs. Maycumber and Mrs. Bowden probably 3 or 4 or maybe 5 years ago, about different ways to provide our kids opportunities. So this is color coded. And if Jim, can you go to that last page if you don't mind? Because it's got the code on it in terms of what each code means. So if you look at the bottom, there's a key. So yellow is the arts, green is business and industry, blue is humanities, and then we have the science, technology, engineering, and STEM pathways. So Jim, can you go back up to the top if you don't mind? So if you look at the pathway, and then I'll kind of take you across the document. So for example, we would put together a local, this is what we're proposing with your support, a local fine arts pathway. And there would be required courses, and there would be recommended courses, and then there would be projects associated with that. And so what it becomes is it becomes almost like when you were in college. If you package courses together, you can get a minor, or you can, get 2 masters, or you can get a bachelor's and a minor, or 2, whatever you'd like to do. You can package your coursework together around your interests to get an endorsement. So we're kind of creating the same environment at our high school. For example, we have no program right now that is specifically a pathway around instrumental music. And so our kids can take a pathway that we create. They would be required to take the honors band class, which is actually a 2-year course. And then we have other recommended courses. We have AP music theory, we have jazz band, we have music theory, guitar, chorus. We have all these courses. And here's the beautiful thing. These courses already exist at our high school. So this is not about creating new courses and hiring new teachers. This is about bundling what we have already in a way that makes sense so that kids can create, take electives and create opportunities for themselves around where their interests lie. And then we would have opportunities for college credits. And then we would have other recommendations and activities that we would want kids to participate with. So I'm not going to read each one of them to you. You have it in your packet, but you can see in yellow, we have fine arts, instrumental music, choral music. Jim, if you can go to the next page. And drama and the performing arts. And then we have communications. We're excited about this one because we would use this as an opportunity to bundle some classes together, but we're also looking at ways to use our radio station as not just as a club, but as an academic, part of their academics. And there's activities that the kids can do. There's finance and accounting, there's international business. Jim, you can keep going. Industry, there's history, there's English language arts, there's international relations and diplomacy. Jim, keep going. And then there's environmental studies, applied math and statistics. And then there's sports, performance, and fitness. And then that's the last page. So what we're proposing here for you is just an opportunity for you to see this is where we'd like to go. And what we think this will do is pique the interest of some students that haven't had an opportunity to bundle and look at classes this way. But it may also keep some kids in Coventry, because there are programs, even though there are approved ride programs in other communities, if a student has a choice of having a fine arts program here or going someplace else, they may stay here. And providing those opportunities to kids, I think, is super important. And so this is something we've been working on for a few years. And these courses are separate from our CTE courses. Those exist, and there's nothing changing with those. This is just another way for us to engage our students in things that they are interested in.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Florio, any comments or questions for Mr. Cowett?
This is awesome. This is absolutely awesome, because this is exactly what I did at Rhode Island College and URI. First, I went into engineering, did that for 3 years, decided it wasn't for me. Then I went into psychology, and went to Rick, and I took Foundation of Education courses, public relations, political campaign manager, AP United States history, government and politics. I mean, these are all the subjects I studied, except they were in college and not high school, and they were never offered at high school. And I think this is a great opportunity for the students that go to Coventry High School. I think it's wonderful, Madam Chair, and I commend the Coventry High School and the pathway endorsement course requirements. I have a suspicion that we're going to get a lot of successful students out of this program, and they'll come back, and maybe they'll help us pass that bond someday, Madam Chair. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian.
I am equally as excited about this myself. Looking at some of them, as you know, both my children went to school for the arts, and they would have been ecstatic to have these courses. It's just, I just think it's great. I think it's more opportunities for our children, and like you said, they will stay here instead of going out of district. So what a great idea. You did a great job putting this all together. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Pearson?
Couple questions because might still be a little fuzzy on this process. So these would be local pathways. So what does that mean for the student as far as how these, if they're on this pathway, how is this endorsement communicated to colleges, universities, employers? Like, how will people know that a student has taken this pathway?
Yeah, that's actually something I left out, and I'm glad you brought it back to my attention. So the students would get a designation. So at graduation, they would get it's like a seal, a designation seal on their diploma. And then we're also looking for a way to celebrate it in a more visual way, whether it has to do with a rope or what do they call the pieces that come down there? A way to designate by color their association to a particular pathway. And doesn't necessarily be by like the pathway, but a humanities designation, a business and finance or business management one. And we're really looking to kind of mimic what colleges do and to make it something that is celebrated by the community. And then the students would also get this designation from the high school and from the commissioner. It's like a designation seal on the diploma.
Great. No, thank you for clarifying. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Actually, Mr. Pearson asked the same exact question. I was wondering if they would get a seal on their diploma if they did in fact complete the pathway. And so that's great to know, because I think that would be important to be able to celebrate that and have a child, student graduating, have that endorsement. I had another question about that. Well, my other comment is, again, I think it's an incredibly smart idea. And I would hope that some of these will end up, depending on how many of our students actually, and how much time it takes to get an endorsement, that some of these pathways will in fact be endorsed by RIDE, so that.
That's our plan.
Yeah,
That's our
so,
plan.
I mean, it makes
This
a
is-
lot of sense. Yeah.
This is just cracking the egg open,
The
getting
beginning.
ourselves set up and get started. And a lot of this goes to Mrs. Bowden and the leadership team at the high school by going through their courses, their course list, and being able to creatively bundle courses so that students have some choice. But our intent is to go that next level and see if we can get some of these approved. And then we can take in kids from other schools if they'd like to come to our community, to our school.
Well, not only that, I think it's a really wonderful complement to guidance in the sense that, their caseloads are so high. Being able to, tell students, these are things, you don't have to come and think about it yourself or come and ask your guidance counselor, I'm interested in X, what courses should I take? Or, it's kind of prepackaged for them and endorsed by the faculty and guidance. So that really makes so much sense, actually. So looking forward to seeing that up and running. I couldn't be more excited about this. So is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the Coventry High School local pathway endorsement.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And before I call for the vote, are there any attendees that would like to comment on this proposal? Doesn't look like we have any hands up, Mr. Murphy, so I don't think. Let me look.
Sorry, missed the mute button. There are no
No,
hands.
that's okay. I can see it on my screen as well, so thank you. So all in favor, if you want to raise your hand. It looks like all of us are in favor. There's no opposed, so motion carries 4-0. And again, I want to thank all the people who have worked on this, great creative ideas, and I think we will be a better, wonderful opportunity for our students and our staff too, as well. And the fact that you didn't have to create new courses, I mean, they were already there. It's just a question of bundling them appropriately and the really cool thing is that they were there all along, and, you know, sometimes probably kids didn't even see that. And even if a guidance counselor said, you know, you should take this, this, and this, if it's not written down, sometimes I think our students might not. It's just like in college, you know, if you do a concentration, these are the courses you're required to take, as well as all the other stuff. It's not like they're not going to get a good education in, you know, if they pick fine arts, they're still going to have to do their math and their, you know, their other curriculum needs that, you know, foreign language, et cetera. So great work. So thank you. Okay, moving on to the number 12, the Title IX presentation. And I did notice that we had our lawyer, Mr. Anderson, has joined our team here tonight. So I'll let Mr. Coward start the presentation, but maybe he'll give that to Mr. Anderson. I'm not sure.
Yes, so we have been discussing Title IX quite a bit in our district, and Mr. Wilson is our resident expert, but we are hopeful to get more people trained. One of the things that we did is we did a training for all our administrative staff, building and central office level. And we had discussed doing a training or a presentation for our school committee, because Title IX crosses into so many different areas that we wanted to make sure that we came before you. Mr. Anderson obviously supports all the work that we do and is, you know, Mr. Wilson's right-hand man when he has questions. And so we're lucky to have Mr. Anderson join this presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to them, so give you a break from listening to me. And when we're done, I'm sure they'll be available to take questions for you. So Mr. Wilson and Mr. Anderson, I'll let you go from there. And Jim, if you don't mind sharing that, reference 6, it'd be great.
So again, good evening, and allowing us to join you this evening to talk about this Title IX. You know, this is all transparency. John and I didn't prep for this, you know, and do a run through together. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit. These are slides that I actually put together to share, like Mr. Cowart said, with the administration team. You know, he said that I'm the resident expert. I guess I am, but it's still pretty new to me. So this is probably, you know, a year and a half. I've been actually probably about a year, because I think I started midway through last year doing this. But it's really been interesting to me, because it's a different facet of my job, and I'm going out there, and it's one of those things I was aware of being a central office administrator, but I really kind of didn't realize how many people throughout the district, teachers, you know, people who work for us, didn't really know what this Title IX thing was. Also, give you a little background about myself. I was a college coach for many years, and Title IX at the collegiate level was always kind of a big talking point. So I had that background, and it kind of didn't dawn on me that a lot of people in the district didn't. So even going and doing this first round of kind of just like the basics of what we're going to do tonight, it's going to be a pretty quick run through. I think set off the light bulb in a lot of people's minds. So if you'll just indulge us, and John, feel free to jump in. You know, these slides you can read yourself. I don't want to get into them, because this is a heavy topic, and there's a lot of meat in these slides. But as we go through them, you know, we'll try to bring situations up that kind of make it real, so you know where this affects the school department in different ways. Again, the first slide you can see there, you can read that yourself. Just to know that Title IX, it protects people from discrimination based on sex and education programs or activities that receive federal and financial assistance. Well, we know we receive financial assistance from the feds, so this definitely includes us. The three main points of this is, you know, making sure we're not excluding anyone from participation. This means not only sports, which is like this is the big one, is the sports, but even like our career in tech. We're taking students from out of town, even in different classes, or, you know, Mr. Cow was talking about pathways. As people choose their pathways, we're not excluding people. The second thing is we don't want to deny them benefits, and certainly not, we don't want them to be subjected to discrimination. If you could go to the next slide.
Yeah, Brad, I'll jump in there. And with regard to the statute, the key takeaways is it applies to issues based on sex. This is about sex discrimination, and sex discrimination, according to the courts, includes sexual orientation. So when we're talking about Title IX, we're talking about treating people differently based on their sex. As Brad indicated, we're also talking about education programs, and education programs is frankly everything that we do. We have CTE programs. We admit students to CTE programs. We have athletic programs. We have classes. In my lifetime, I can tell you that boys took shop and girls took home economics. Times have changed, in my lifetime, where that would violate Title IX. And we have to be alert when we implement new programs or we operate existing programs to make sure that we are not doing things that discriminate on the basis of sex. Discrimination on the basis of sex can also include situations where a student is excluded because of harassment. I'm a boy who wants to take a home economics class, and I'm ridiculed. I'm harassed. I'm called names because boys shouldn't take home economics class. So it can include to situations that involve harassment. It can go as far as harassment being inappropriate conduct, that is, inappropriate conduct based on sex, involving students on students and teachers on students, and teachers and I should say employees on students and employees on employees. The breadth of this statute is very broad, and our responsibilities as a school district and your responsibilities as a school committee are broad.
And John, I want to build on a little bit what you said when you were going on the employees on employees, employees on students. You're gonna hear me build on that in a slide or two. That it's even broader than that. But let's go to the next slide, because a lot of what John just talked about, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So again, when we're looking at this, the key areas in which the recipients have Title IX obligations are, like, again, that recruiting for sports, recruiting for, again, like the CTE. I'll give you an example, like our golf team. Our golf team is neither a male team, it's a female team. Right now, it just happens to be all males for it. So that's something that, like, we should be keeping an eye on and saying, like, are we doing enough to recruit, and let the females know, like, hey, this is for you too. The athletics has been, like I said, because of collegiate stuff, that's been the big one in the past. But the other piece is, when we're looking at this, is also the way we discipline students. Like Mr. Anderson was saying, like, in the past, boys will be boys, or that's expected. So is the discipline the same? Or again, I've been in this since 97. There was times when it was like, oh, girls didn't do that. Like, she will never do it again. Like, no, it's got to be the same. Like, are we treating the boy the same way we would treat the girl, or vice versa? Jim, you want to go to the next slide there? So this is where I wanted to build on a little bit what Mr. Anderson was saying a minute ago. So harassers can be students, school staff, and this is the important part. Even someone visiting the school, such as a student or employee from another school. So we host basketball games. We have contracted workers through, like, our Sodexo or the meal services, or we have agencies working with different populations. And there's a lot of people who aren't directly Coventry employees who are walking around our schools every day or on our school grounds afterwards for sports related activities or plays or things of that nature. So it's a wide variety of people. John, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've gotten it. Again, an example that I've dealt with, not here in Coventry, but in another school district, was a situation where I had a school secretary being harassed by a parent. Every day the parent came in to school with their child late, and when the parent was signing in the child would run off to class, and then the parent had some really inappropriate comments to make to the secretary, who he was frankly trying to proposition on a daily basis. That's sex harassment that can happen in a school situation.
So again, what are our responsibilities when this happens? So our responsibilities are again, first and foremost, is to respond in a prompt manner. As soon as we identify it, we dive right into it and start investigating. So we're going to be, I love this term, deliberately indifferent. Again, we're seeing, as neutral as can be as we're taking this and starting to respond to it. And what I do is when I get involved is, I contact the complainant right away, like a principal will call me or a teacher may say something to me, and I'll now the light bulbs are going off because people know what this is about. Like, hey, Brad, like this situation, a student did this, or, a teacher said this. I'll immediately come in and explain this whole process to the complainant. And that will happen usually within, hours, not days, definitely not weeks, but hours of finding this out. Let's say if a complaint is filed, the first thing we're going to do is offer supportive measures. So, before we even go down the whole road, right away, I'll give you an example of maybe like a student on student allegation. There's certain things we can do like right away, like, look at their schedules. Is there a way to separate them on a day, or even an employee on employee? Like, do they need to share the same office? While I'm investigating this, from beginning to end, can they work in two different spaces until this gets the proper investigation that it requires? So again, those supportive measures we will look at like right away. That doesn't have to wait to the end of the process. And that's something I'm able to do right from the beginning. And in almost every case so far that I've been involved in has had supportive measures right from the get-go, like things we were putting in within hours to try to mediate the issue. Then the next thing is just follow the Title IX grievance process. And then, Jim, if you want to skip to the next one. So again, this is the investigation process. What is expected under federal law is, again, that there's a written notice. I'm gonna come back to that later on in the slides. The burden of gathering the evidence is on the school department. Again, it's our duty when we investigate and people help me investigate that we go find any of the evidence that is needed. We have to offer equal opportunity for both sides to present the facts. Again, going back to what I said before, deliberately indifferent. It's equal on both sides. And then offer the opportunity for the person and each side to either select an advisor or, make them aware that they can have an attorney be their advisor. And in the cases I've been involved with, people have usually elected to just have somebody other than an attorney as an advisor. Jimmy, you want to go to the next one? So then what I would do is send a written notice, send, through this process, send evidence, send investigation reports to everyone involved. That's really important. I explain that to people when they decide to file a complaint. It's not like some of the other disciplinary measures that we take where we often say, I can't tell you what I'm doing with the other family. I can't tell you where I'm in right now. If I take a statement, or someone who's an investigator takes a statement, that statement, the person needs to know right from the get-go, is going to be shared with everybody involved, both sides. So, and because it's of the sexual nature, like, it's something that they're going to need to realize that everything's going to be out there. Both sides are going to have access to all this information, to all my reports. So it's kind of an eye-opening, because it's a different kind of complaint than schools usually how we handle things. Mr. Anderson, anything to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it well. we've been talking about sexual harassment, but I want to make it clear that it equally can extend to complaints that are received with regard to programming. Again, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example, frankly, from when I was on the school committee in Pawtucket. And at Shea High School, the athletic department brought new uniforms for the boys' basketball teams. And the girls' basketball team was told to sell chocolates to raise the money to pay for their uniforms. That's illegal. That violates Title IX. And if a complaint is filed that we're not treating, for example, athletic teams equally in terms of things like coaching, in terms of access to facilities, in terms of access to resources like transportation, we're going to be subject to a Title IX complaint. The district can be sued. In addition to that, the district can be, a person can file a complaint with the United States Department of Education in Boston. So the consequences can be quite serious and frankly quite expensive for a district not to comply with Title IX. So when matters are brought to Mr. Wilson's attention, we take them very seriously because the sooner we address them, the better.
Jim, the next slide. I actually covered this one too, but you can read through that. This is a quick slide. Just know that there is an appeals process. There's something at the end of the road. Should I send a dismissal, that the complaint knows that if actually it wouldn't come from me at that point. It would come from a decision maker. If the decision maker was going to send a dismissal, that they would have an appeal process. Next slide, Jim. Jim, there you go. There's also an informal resolution, which allows both parties to find a way to solve this outside of a formal complaint. I will say though, there's one caveat to that, and it's very important. It cannot be an option that we offer when there's a staff and student issue. So this is a road that we can decide to go down in a lot of different cases. And that's usually the case once people find out that everything's going to be public to both parties, that they might want to choose to go down this route. But this cannot be an option, again, for when there's a staff student issue. So you also need to know that we have our own policy. You can find it on the website. It does include the definition. Mr. Anderson said this in the beginning about, this is what we have as our definition. I'm going to read it because it's that important. Discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, hostile environment created by sexual harassment, quid pro quo sexual harassment, sexual contact, consent, non-consensual sex contact, sexual intercourse, non-consensual sexual intercourse. So again, that is all right in our policy. You can find that right on our website. Jim?
Yeah, I also want to make it clear to the school committee that there can be issues that arise off campus. For example, a sexual assault can happen off campus, but that if there are consequences from the sexual assault that come into the school setting, the school is responsible for providing a safe educational environment to our students. So, years ago, I was involved in a case where there was an allegation of sexual assault at an off-campus event, and the kids in the school essentially picked sides. Some kids believed the boy, some kids believed the girl. When the girl walked down the hallway, the boy's friends called her names. When the boy walked down the hallway, the girl's friends called the boy names. Both the boy and the girl had Title IX claims against the school in that particular circumstance, which is why the school intervened immediately, even though the original sexual assault didn't occur on campus. It didn't occur at the high school at all.
So I said I was going to come back to this. So again, the only difference in our policy, we have the ability to go above and beyond was, what is in the federal language. So we also allow an oral grievance. So again, that is really important for our employees to know, such as like the principals or teachers, that if something's even said, like that's something that should be being brought to my attention as a Title IX coordinator, that they have that, and that's in our language that you can find online. And again, below is just the information that they would have to provide, the specific dates, where it happened, who's involved. And another piece of this that's important too is number 8, the desired remedy thought. So again, coming to me and saying, this is what I'd like to see happen. It's not like just a gotcha, like, that nobody's going to, well, somebody could go to jail, but I wouldn't put somebody in jail over this. So it's not just like a gotcha. It's like, well, what do you want to see happen? Like what would make you feel that could bring this to some resolution? And so that's a big piece of this, that when I describe this process, that's very important. And oftentimes at that point, the people have not, or the plaintiff has not even really thought that far ahead of like, oh, I don't know what I want.
And sometimes what the student or the parent is looking for is really, quite simple. They may, sometimes all they're looking for is for the offensive behavior to stop, and for the other person to understand that what's happening is wrong. That's very common, for example, in cases involving elementary students. Parents both, if there's a problem between two students, both sets of parents recognize that these are 3rd or 4th graders. But on the other hand, the parent who is complaining simply wants the behavior to stop.
So again, these are just the steps that we take in Coventry that are on a website. Upon the grievance, the investigator shall facilitate a proper report. Like I said, we were very quick to take action. The investigation must allow for the grieving individual and the subject of the grievance and the alleged harasser to provide information, including the names of witnesses and other evidence relevant to the investigation. But again, the burden's on me then to go find that evidence. And then we do the prompt interviews. We do detailed written statements. We gather those. Again, this is all part of the burden of us putting all that materials together for the complaint. And that's it. So it's still somewhat to me, but it's I get ahead of myself. Let's just flip again. Oh, go ahead, Jim. Or I'm sorry, at the end, then the written documentation regarding the complaint and any resolution shall be provided to the building administrator, to the grieving party of the accused within 30 working school days of filing the grievance. If the violation is found to have occurred, Coventry shall take steps to prevent the recurrence of the violation and correct its discriminatory effects on the person affected. And again, those include like disciplinary action, could be everything from suspension, termination, to counseling, to safety plans. In my experience, it's been mostly safety plans for the student on student. But again, it's newer to me. I'm sure John has more examples of different remedies that have been used over the years.
Yeah, I think, again, I think that safety plans can include things like changing student schedules, changing when students pass in the hallways, changing transportation, asking teachers to be more vigilant in situations.
So I can open to any questions.
Thank you so much for this really wonderful presentation to both of you. I guess we can start with Mr. Florio. Any questions for Mr. Anderson or Mr. Wilson?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for being the director of the Title IX I was director of affirmative action for the Department of Corrections. So it's tough. It's tough when you get a complaint. You have to answer it immediately, and
Oh, yeah.
you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Florio.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the presentation. It was very eye-opening. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson?
Just one quick question. There was talk at one point last year, and it just because of the changing, the change of the presidency. Do we anticipate any changes to Title IX in the coming years? Like anything, has anything been announced or discussed or?
I'd be happy to answer that question.
Yep.
The answer to your question is yes. The regulations implementing Title IX have kind of swung like a pendulum between President Bush and President Obama and President Trump, and the swing has not yet happened with President Biden. A lot of it goes with regard to the process. The current regulations were issued in 2019 or 2020.
I think 19.
I'm sorry, Brad.
I think it was 19.
Yeah, 2019 by the Trump administration. Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education at the time, felt that, and these regulations apply from preschool all the way through graduate school. Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education at the time, felt that at the college level that the Obama administration approach was unfair to males. That males college students were guilty before had to prove themselves innocent. So this pendulum swung. A lot of procedures were added, and the job was frankly made a lot more complicated. With different procedural steps. I think one thing the committee should be aware of is that Mr. Wilson is the only Title IX trained investigator, and he's our coordinator for the 7th largest school district in the state. It is a priority of the administration to get other people trained, and we're looking to do that in the next few months. Because right now, in addition to doing his responsibilities as special ed director, he has to drop everything from time to time when we get a complaint, for example, of student-on-student harassment, in our schools. And people say, well, this is Coventry, those things don't happen. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that's simply not true. We have had complaints here in the district, and we have investigated those complaints and gone through this entire process on multiple occasions. It's a very time-consuming exercise, and the sooner we get more people trained, the better.
That's the only question I had. Thank you for the update, and I would definitely support training additional individuals to make sure we're adequately staffed to handle these complaints as they come in. So again, thank you for the update and the information.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I have a follow-up on the transparency of, well, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Wilson for taking on this role and again, training and being part of the training of new individuals that can do this. I'm just curious if we have any thought to, or what is the process of keeping track of the complaints? Is there some kind of, I know it's confidential in some ways information, but is it written down? Would you be able to, for example, issue an annual report saying, this, not obviously the people involved, but this is how many of this type of case there were complaints.
Yes.
This is, the only reason I even think about this is because, I work at Brown, and so we get that from our Title IX office, and they basically don't describe it, but it gives you an idea as to, how much is actually happening on the campus. And so I'm just wondering, I would like to propose that kind of data is available to, at least
Yeah.
if people wanted to hear it.
So I obviously keep my own records. And there's really kind of two areas of data here. There's one like the formal complaint, and then there's one that, I go out and explain the process and either is remedied in mediation, or doesn't make it, all the way to the complaint process. And I think both numbers are important, right? Because you
They
want
are,
to see
yeah.
how many are even getting flagged up, and then how many go through. Again, luckily the ones that go all the way through aren't as often as the earlier mentioned. John, I shared that number right now for the school year.
Sure.
Am I able to do that? Yeah. So we've had 2 this year that have gone all the way to complaint since the beginning of the school year. I was just trying to check really quick, so I thought that might come up as a question. So I was like trying to look, so I label all different. I think there's been eight total that I've started the process with, and it just ended up that it should either fizzled out or that there was already a solution, and they didn't want to take it any further.
Okay.
For that's for this school year. But yeah, that would be something that we'd be able to do, would report out on that.
I think it's kind of important because occasionally, rumors start in the community, for example, and they think, oh, this happened, and it's just not even true. And then the resolution of it, what was the process, and so to allay people's fears, I think it would be nice to be able to, have that report at hand, that, you could actually state the statistics and actually then look from year to year to see if it gets worse, if it's, a cohort of students that seem to, or teachers that seem to be involved with this, and what are the repercussions of a student being complained against multiple times, even if it never went to some kind of resolution or a formal. So I think that data is really important to be able to share. And so that the process needs to be transparent, especially if we start training other individuals. There should be a central clearing place where, still, I assume that you'll still be the coordinator, and maybe you'll just have some mini coordinators. I'm not sure what the structure is going to
I
actually
don't know how
look
it would
like.
work. It's up to the superintendent.
Yeah. So again, if it's not sort of a centralized kind of reporting system of some sort, then you lose track of what's happening,
Yeah.
with these trained people. I could envision that. So, but I'm sure you guys will get it all together and figure it out.
Yep. So, Mr. Coward, how would I go about like marking? Is there somewhere where we put like an annual, like a February, or at the end of the year, I annually report?
I think we probably could schedule them early on for 2 points throughout the year that we come back, because the other thing that we've been working on that we need to bring before the school committee is also incidences of bullying. And I think it would probably be great to kind
That
of
would make sense.
tie those things together and give the update to the school committee on those 2 topics on at least twice a year.
I think that would be very helpful. I think very appreciated by all of the school committee members, as well as the community, because then it becomes open and transparent. So I appreciate all the work on this. I think it's critical work. And, I'm so glad we're not living in the days when, as a girl, as a girl, I can remember people saying, "You're going into science? What are you talking about?" I had teachers. My physics teacher in high school that actually said, "You girls are taking the place of, a boy that's going to go on and raise a family and have to support their family. You shouldn't be in this class." And it was like an AP physics class or whatever. And I remember just being astounded by that. And obviously it was in the late 60s, early, I graduated from high school in 1970. And all of my classmates that were women were just outraged, but there was no place for us to go with that outrage. And, a lot of our students today don't even know that occurred and that things like that existed. So I'm grateful for Title IX, as much as it can be tough to deal with sometimes. And understand the law and make sure that it's followed correctly. I think it's definitely something that I support. So, and I'm sure there's been a lot of, on the other side, males that were interested in things that were traditionally women things, girl things. And so it cuts both ways. And so I'm grateful that the law was enacted and that we're conscious of these kind of restrictions and thoughts and whatever, and that we're making decisions based on this kind of law. So very grateful.
Super important.
Very important. Is there any, before we move on, again, thank you both for the presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment about this particular issue?
Doesn't look like there's anybody.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can move on to the next item, which kind of goes hand in hand with Title IX, which is the girls lacrosse program at Coventry High School, the discussion and approval. So, Mr. Cowett, would you like to start this, or?
Yes, and I want to thank also Mr. Wilson and Mr. Anderson for that presentation. And I appreciate Mr. Anderson also staying on for this agenda item as well, just in case any questions come up relative to the last topic. So if you recall, a few meetings back, we had the athletic director, Mr. Jones, come before the school committee and talk about a girls lacrosse team. And there were a lot of things discussed and shared at that meeting. And we talked about, the different opportunities provided to students and the ability to put together a lacrosse team. After that meeting, we circled back together. We contacted Mr. Anderson, we talked to Mr. Jones, and then we also brought in Mr. Sands, and we discussed what it would cost and what the capacity of the district to put that team in place for this school year. And so what Mr. Sands has done is he worked with Mr. Jones to come up with the budget. The budget is comparable to the same to the boys lacrosse team in terms of how much is budgeted for the uniforms, the coaches, all of that is comparable. The only thing that may run different is not necessarily a cost associated with our creation of the team, but just in terms of the number of games and whether they have as many away games, for example, as the boys team in terms of transportation costs. But startup costs, uniform costs, all that is the same. That was exhibit number 7 in your packet. So you have that in front of you. So we're just looking for an approval from the school committee to move forward on the creation of the girls lacrosse team at the high school for this spring season. We've already posted an anticipated coaching position. I can't tell you the status of that off the top of my head, but we're trying to move forward on that because the season's going to be on us fairly shortly.
Thank you. And I think the cost is what, 21,000? I think we saw that in our reference, approximately.
Yes, the estimated cost is 21,000.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Mr. Florio, anything before we move on this particular item?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. Mrs. Clunian?
Questions?
No questions? Okay. Mr. Pearson?
No questions at this time.
Okay, then are we ready for a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve a girls lacrosse program at Coventry High School.
I second the motion.
And before we call for the vote, are there any attendees present that would like to comment on this?
No takers.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
I'll just say something. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I have a lot of lacrosse background myself. My daughter plays lacrosse. Nationwide, I'm looking at it, the last time they took to find out how many boys and girls are playing high school lacrosse was right before COVID hit. And at that time, there was only about 14,000 less girls playing lacrosse than boys nationwide.
Wow.
So it's awesome, and I'm super proud of the school committee for taking this step, and I thank you.
Great, thank you.
And as a sidebar, every opportunity I get, I call Mr. Wilson Coach Wilson just to see and get him to volunteer to the coach.
Oh. Oh, that's lovely. All right, so we've made a motion and seconded it. All in favor, you can raise your hand if you're approving that. Looks like everybody's approving, so motion carries 4-0. And I just want to congratulate Mr. Jones and the young lady who came in actually, there were more than one young lady that came
yeah.
to that meeting. And actually, the spokesperson said she had never even played lacrosse, but she was an advocate for, getting this all together and doing, making, and perhaps even being on a team. So I'm super excited that this has come to fruition. So thank you, everyone, for your hard work on that. Moving on, I guess, to item number 14, the superintendent's report, filling in for the superintendent, Mr. Howard.
Yep, playing the role of Craig Levis is Don Cowart. The report is going to be fairly brief. COVID-19 update. Yes, Dave.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're going to be happy. It's going to be quick. So COVID-19 report is, the good news is everything is trending down. Everything. The percentage rate, the cases per 100,000, everything's trending down. Our municipal numbers for the town of Coventry are trending down. Our dashboard for staff and students is all trending down. So we're happy to report everything is moving in the right direction. We did get a number of emails after the governor's press conference yesterday. I did send out a notification to the parents, just letting them know that on the next meeting, on the February 17th meeting, we would address the change in the mandate and what our new policy will be around masking students in schools. But that announcement came out yesterday, and part of the announcement was that they were also going to be recommendations from RIDO and RIDE. Those haven't come out yet. We don't know specifically what those recommendations are. We don't know how they'll impact our potential policy around this. So that's going to be on the next agenda for our next meeting. Performance audit, the only update I have around that is that the email went out to staff, and staff is participating in the audit at this time. The survey is meant to get input from the employees in the town and school about work conditions and how they feel about working here, and things that they see as being needs and things that they think are successes for our organization. And then the last part was, in the past, we've had legislative joint meetings with the town council. This year's meeting is scheduled for February 28th at 6 o'clock. I guess what Craig would probably ask you is how we want to do our questions. In the past, sometimes we have had school committee people submit questions through the school department, and then we would submit the questions to the town. Do you want to ask the questions on your own? I guess something to think about, and to let Craig know about how you want to do the questions that you may potentially have for the legislators and how you want to proceed with that. That's it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cowart. Any questions for Mr. Cowart? Mr. Florio?
Great job, Don. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mrs. Colonian?
Good job, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson, anything?
No questions. Thank you for the updates.
No problem.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but they're not on this particular topic, so I'll ask them maybe during citizens' comments. Mr. Anderson, can I ask now, or should I wait till citizens' comments and ask as a citizen? Thank you,
I
Ryan.
would suggest you ask them as a citizen.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item number 15, which is citizens' comments. Are there any citizen comments from the attendees that are attending or listening?
Doesn't look like anyone wants to speak.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. So as a citizen, I do have, and actually as a school committee member too, I'm wondering if someone on the panel, either Mr. Cowart or Mr. Anderson, knows when open meetings need to go back to being in person as opposed to virtual. I know the governor's, I wasn't able to actually decipher from the executive order.
I don't know the answer to that. My recollection is the current executive order expires on February 14th, and I don't know whether the governor extended it or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't either. Mr. Cowett, you don't know either?
I
So
don't know. And
nobody-
the only thing I recall reading, and I'm not sure if this is even on the same topic, is I think he needs to get authority to extend his executive orders from the General Assembly, if I
He
understand that
does,
correctly.
but I thought that is the vote today, or was it yesterday? Today, Mr. Pearson? I see you shaking your head. So maybe we'll know tomorrow, but, okay. So that was I think that was my only question.
I think
Oh.
it passed. I think they extended his emergency powers.
I thought so too, but yeah, I think I did hear the vote on the 6 o'clock, on the 5 o'clock report. I think there were 8 nays and 30 something yays to extend it to another month or something, to March 4th, was it? I think maybe, I don't know. Or even longer. That wouldn't make much sense. Yes, okay. And so my second comment as a citizen is to inform the school committee that the legislators meeting is during a formally what would have been the town council meeting on their last meeting of the month, which is when we are scheduled to do the school committee report. And I believe, Mr. Florio, you were in line to do that report for the school committee. And so I was just going to, skip the report in February, but President Dixon asked if we could still present a February report, but in the first meeting in March for the town council. So that would mean your new report for your February report would be done on March 14th, I think. I don't know. I've redone the schedule and I will
That's
send
fine,
the
Madam
schedule
Chair.
to everyone. Again, with the new names, and obviously we don't have a District 1 person yet. So we don't really need to, I don't know who that person may or may not be. So I just left that person sort of just District 1. So I will, just to alert you, I will be sending you an email with the new schedule for when we're supposed to report, so that it kind of is easier just to explain it in person. So that's it for me as a citizen.
No problem, Madam Chair. No problem whatsoever.
All right, thank you. So I guess we can go ahead and schedule our next meeting. So is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to schedule our next virtual meeting.
I don't know. So I think we'll just say meeting because it's February 17th. So
Okay.
I think we'll still be able to be virtual, but I'm not sure.
Oh, no, this one, my schedule says to schedule next meeting for March 10th, 2022.
I'm sorry. What
No,
are you talking
That
about?
was changed.
Oh, that
There was an
changed?
updated one.
Oh.
Yeah, there was an updated agenda sent to you.
Oh.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it
next
says
week, the
February.
17th.
It says February 17th. That's next
Oh, I'm
Thursday.
sorry. I
Because we
I
can't-
much preferred the 10th.
Well, the thing is that because of February vacation,
Yeah,
our last meeting of the month, I think, had to be rearranged. And so,
I got you. Okay, no problem.
so it's February 17th, next Thursday.
Okay, no problem. And that'll be virtual, I would assume.
I would think so, yes.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I make a motion to schedule next virtual meeting for February 17, 2022 at 6 p.m. And Mr. Murphy, maybe you could make sure that I have the same easy access for executive session.
I'll make sure, yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Is there a
I
second on
second the
that
motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian.
Thank you,
And
Ms. Sorry.
all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Looks like carries 4-0. And finally, adjournment, I have 8:21.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:21 p.m.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor, you can raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Looks like the motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance, to the public for joining us, and we will see you next Thursday.
It's
Thank
a
you,
great meeting,
everyone.
Madam Chair.
Was. Thank you, Mr. Cowett, for pinch hitting for the superintendent.
Not a
Good job.
problem.